How can a man disappear for years, erase every trace of himself, and still be caught because of something so small you almost step over it? The question lingered in Detective Laura Myers's mind as she stepped cautiously through the dimly lit room, the faint scent of aged wood and cold metal hanging in the air. The house was eerily silent, a perfect crime scene untouched by chaos or error. No fingerprints smudged on the glass, no DNA traces beneath the windowsills, no tool marks marring the locks or hinges, nothing to suggest a break-in, nothing to betray the thief's presence. It was as if the intruder had melted into the shadows, leaving behind only the whispers of their craft. Laura's team moved methodically, scanning every inch with high-powered flashlights and forensic tools. Yet the frustration was tangible. This was no ordinary burglary. It was a masterclass in evasion. Years ago, a man vanished from the world, a thief whose name was whispered only in law enforcement circles, the ghost who perfected the untraceable crime. Every heist attributed to him had left investigators baffled, a trail of impossibility that seemed to mock the very idea of catching him. Now, with this new robbery echoing that same impossible precision, the pressure to solve the case mounted like a heavy fog. As the team combed through the scene, Laura's eyes caught a faint shimmer near an old window frame, something almost imperceptible, like a dust residue shimmering under the flashlight's beam. She knelt down, heart quickening. There, barely visible, was a partial footprint, so delicate it could have been dismissed as nothing more than dirt. But Laura knew better. This was a mistake, a crack in the flawless veneer the thief had built around himself. The footprint was microscopic, incomplete, and yet it bore the unmistakable pattern of a rare sole design, one not found in every shoe store, one that only a handful of buyers would own. The thief had overlooked it, a detail so minuscule it almost seemed like a cruel joke. Yet here it was, linking this latest crime to a long-forgotten cold case buried deep in the archives. The realization struck Laura hard. This tiny print was the thread that could unravel years of mystery, the singular clue that would connect every perfect crime the man had ever committed. Detective Myers straightened, the weight of the discovery settling over her like a storm. This was no ordinary lead. It was the beginning of the end, the key to shattering the myth of an untouchable ghost. And it all came down to one nearly invisible footprint, hidden in plain sight. Before we dive deeper, take a moment to settle in, because what unfolds next will change everything you thought you knew. The pieces are starting to shift, and as the puzzle tightens, new details will emerge that challenge every assumption. You won't want to miss a single twist, so stay with us until the very end. The truth is closer than ever, but it's wrapped in shadows that only careful eyes can penetrate. Let's keep moving forward together and see where this trail leads. He was never seen, only felt. A ghost slipping through the cracks of the most secure places, leaving nothing but whispers and baffled investigators in his wake. The man who would come to be known as the Vanishing Step earned that nickname not from any flashy escape or daring stunt, but from the eerie silence with which he vanished, as if swallowed whole by the very air around him. His ability to disappear was less about magic and more about mastery. Years of meticulous study had transformed him into a phantom of precision, a thief who didn't just evade capture. He erased the possibility of it. From the start, it was clear this was no ordinary criminal. Unlike many who left digital trails, emails, phone calls, or even careless social media posts, the Vanishing Step operated in a realm untouched by modern technology. No cameras caught his face, no fingerprints lingered on glass or metal, and no electronic devices whispered secrets of his whereabouts. His tools were as untraceable as his shadow. No electronic lock picks, no hack systems, no getaway cars with GPS trackers. He moved with the silent efficiency of a soldier on a mission, his approach methodical and calculated down to the smallest detail. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states, initially baffled by their individual cases, began to connect the dots. Files were shared between departments in quiet meetings and encrypted digital exchanges. Each robbery ended the same way: an empty vault, untouched alarms, and zero physical evidence. There were no signs of forced entry, no security footage showing a suspect, and no witnesses capable of providing a description. It was as if the thief existed only in the gaps between moments. What made him truly formidable was his relentless study of his targets. He spent weeks, sometimes months, analyzing camera angles, guard rotations, lighting changes, and even the subtle shifts in environmental patterns that could aid or hinder his movements. Every step he took was calculated to avoid detection. A blind spot here, a momentary lapse in surveillance there. He understood the psychology of security personnel, predicting when and where their attention would waver. He seemed to move not just through space but through time itself, arriving and disappearing in the precise seconds that made the difference between success and failure. Despite the military-level precision and near-perfect execution, there was one detail that slipped through his armor, one tiny imperfection that would ultimately unravel the myth: the sole of his own shoe. For all his preparation, this overlooked clue became the thread that began to pull at the fabric of his carefully woven anonymity. It was an imprint left behind in a rare moment when circumstances forced him to tread on a surface that preserved the pattern of his footwear. A pattern unique enough to be traced. This single footprint, almost insignificant at first glance, would become the key to unlocking a timeline that had long seemed impenetrable. It was the first tangible fragment of the man behind the myth, a silent signature that contradicted his name and reputation. From that moment, the legend of the vanishing step started to shift from an untouchable specter to a man who, despite his brilliance, was human after all. Stay with us as we move forward, because the next reveal will connect every heist, every disappearance, and every shadowed moment into a clear, startling picture. What seemed impossible is about to come into focus, and the story you thought you knew is about to be rewritten. The Vanishing Step's legendary heist was more than a crime. It was a symphony of precision, planning, and misdirection that left the city's best detectives grasping at shadows. After the daring theft of priceless artifacts and jewels from the heavily guarded museum, every lead seemed to evaporate into thin air. Investigators pieced together what they believed was the escape route: a labyrinthine network of abandoned maintenance shafts beneath the city streets, long forgotten by urban planners and neglected by surveillance systems. These claustrophobic corridors, once used for underground cable runs and emergency access, became the perfect arteries for his getaway, invisible to the city's modern watchtowers. Surveillance footage, painstakingly reviewed frame by frame, revealed the gaps, blind spots where the camera's slow panning or obstructed views created fleeting moments of invisibility. The Vanishing Step exploited these gaps with surgical timing, slipping through shadows just as the cameras swiveled away. He had mapped every twitch and turn of the city's electronic eyes, turning the surveillance grid from a trap into an aid. But what truly baffled the investigators was the methodical destruction of electronics along his path. Security systems were disabled not by brute force, but with subtle hacking that triggered silent shutdowns and looped feeds, leaving no trace of tampering. Phones, GPS trackers, and even police radio frequencies were jammed or wiped clean, severing any electronic breadcrumbs that could have traced his steps. Identity was another battlefield in his war on capture. Throughout the escape, he switched personas multiple times, borrowing the faces and names of unsuspecting bystanders, employees, and even tourists. Each new identity came with altered appearances, contacts, wigs, and carefully crafted accents that blurred his profile into a shifting mosaic. He crossed busy marketplaces, crowded subway cars, and bustling cafes, blending seamlessly into the ever-moving crowd. His understanding of human behavior was as sharp as his technical skills. He used the city's noise and chaos as a cloak, erasing his tracks with the subtlety of a ghost. Detectives, despite their relentless efforts, found themselves outmatched. Days turned into weeks, and every lead dissolved into frustration. The Vanishing Step was not just a thief but a master illusionist, dissolving like smoke whenever captured. His escape seemed perfect, an unbreakable riddle that mocked the city's finest minds. Every time the investigation seemed to close in, he was already miles ahead, a shadow slipping through the cracks of the urban labyrinth. Yet, in the quiet aftermath of the chaos, a small detail emerged, one overlooked in the frenzy of the chase. Among the scattered debris near the final access point, investigators found an imprint, a specific pattern worn into the bottom of a shoe. It was faint, almost invisible to the naked eye, but under enhanced analysis, it revealed a unique tread design known only to a rare brand of custom footwear favored by a handful of elite operatives in the underground world. This pattern, carved by use and wear, was a signature of someone who had walked this path before, someone who had left a trace long before the Vanishing Step's latest act. That pattern had been recorded once before. The forensic team gathered around the screen, the room thick with a tense silence broken only by the soft hum of the enhancement software at work. They had been chasing shadows for days, but this was something else entirely. The footprint image, initially blurred and indecipherable, began to sharpen with each adjustment, revealing a sole pattern unlike any they had seen before. The initial assumption that it might be a common brand was quickly discarded. This was no ordinary tread. As the pixels aligned perfectly, the lead analyst's voice cracked slightly, betraying a mixture of excitement and disbelief. This pattern, it's not mass-produced. The others leaned in closer, eyes fixed on the monitor. With every detail becoming clearer, it was evident the sole belonged to an extremely rare model, one sold in very limited quantities and discontinued years ago. Such shoes had never been popular in the mainstream market, known only within select circles for their quality and exclusivity. The team exchanged looks. If this footprint belonged to one of those rare pairs, the implications were staggering. Whoever had left this mark had access to something few could claim. The software began isolating the pattern, zooming in on the intricate grooves and ridges that made it unmistakably unique. Then, as if the sole had a story to tell, a subtle irregularity emerged. A tiny missing segment in the tread, a defect caused by years of wear and tear. It was so minor that only the most detailed inspection could uncover it, but it was unmistakably there. "That gap," said the forensic specialist, pointing at the screen. "It's not part of the original design. It's a flaw, where from use, unique to this particular shoe." The room fell silent again, the gravity of this discovery sinking in. Such a defect was like a fingerprint, a distinct signature that could link this shoe and its owner to other places and times. Digging into the archives, the team's historian suddenly gasped. "Wait, I've seen this before." She pulled up an old case file from years ago, dust-covered and forgotten by many. The cold case had been filed away after going cold, a victim with no leads, no suspects, and a footprint that had never matched anything in the database until now. The pattern on that footprint was identical. The same rare sole, the same unique defect. The room seemed to shrink as the weight of the connection pressed down on them. Two separate incidents, years apart, linked by a single overlooked detail, this rare, imperfect footprint. Could it be the same person? Or someone with access to the same exclusive footwear? The possibilities twisted in every direction, each more unsettling than the last. The lead investigator swallowed hard, looking around at the team. This changes everything. The realization was clear. This wasn't just a new clue. It was a thread tying together mysteries thought unrelated, opening doors to answers no one had dared to seek. Before anyone could say more, the software pinged with a new alert. Another footprint had been detected nearby. This one, too, bore the same rare tread. The room held its breath. What had started as a faint trace was now a trail, one that might finally unravel the truth behind these perfect crimes gone wrong. Stay with us, because this discovery is about to turn the entire investigation upside down. The cold case file, long gathering dust in the archives, suddenly took on new life as investigators pored over the details with fresh eyes. Years ago, the museum burglary had seemed like a baffling anomaly. A meticulously planned heist executed in the dead of night, leaving behind only a single partial footprint. At the time, the print was dismissed, too fragmented, too incomplete to yield any meaningful leads. Without corroborating evidence, the trail went cold, and the case slipped into the shadows of forgotten mysteries. Now, the discovery of a second footprint nearby, bearing the same unusual tread pattern, reignited the investigation. Forensic analysts immediately recognized the significance. This rare sole design was not a common brand or model, but a bespoke or heavily customized shoe, one that could act as a unique identifier. The partial print from the museum and the recent footprint were like puzzle pieces, each fragmentary alone but together forming a clearer picture. The team initiated a painstaking timeline comparison, tracing the movements and methods behind both crimes. The museum burglary, recorded years prior, had involved precise timing, entry after midnight, bypassing state-of-the-art security systems with an ease that suggested inside knowledge. The recent crime mirrored this pattern: late-night intrusion, expertly circumvented alarms, and a focus on high-value, portable items. Behavioral patterns surfaced. Both perpetrators avoided unnecessary risk, took only what could be easily concealed, and displayed an uncanny ability to leave minimal traces. More striking was the precision with which the footprints matched not only in tread but in wear patterns. Forensic podiatrists analyzed the pressure points and gait inferred from the partial prints, noting a distinctive limp that consistently shifted weight to one side. This subtle yet telling detail was critical. It indicated the same individual had left both marks, despite the years between the incidents. The limp was an unintentional signature, a human flaw embedded in what otherwise seemed like perfect crimes. Further investigation uncovered additional parallels. Witness accounts from the museum case described a figure moving with quiet confidence, a person familiar with the building's layout. The recent crime scene revealed signs of similar reconnaissance, security camera blind spots exploited, escape routes pre-planned. The modus operandi aligned impeccably, suggesting a calculated, repeat offender rather than a series of unrelated criminals. As the evidence mounted, skepticism gave way to a quiet certainty. The same man had committed both crimes, his earlier act dismissed as an isolated event only because the partial footprint was not connected to anything else. Now, that single detail became the anchor linking what once seemed like disconnected incidents. The breakthrough underscored how even minute clues, once overlooked, could unravel layers of deception. The team's renewed focus on the footprint led them to revisit other unsolved cases in the region, searching for similar prints or patterns. Each new piece of data was cross-referenced, revealing a network of crimes that might share the same elusive perpetrator. The footprint was no longer just a fragment of evidence. It was a thread weaving through a tapestry of criminal acts, exposing the man behind them. This evolving investigation stands as a powerful reminder. Sometimes, the smallest detail holds the greatest power to connect seemingly isolated events. If you've encountered cases where a single clue bridged multiple mysteries, share your thoughts and stories. Together, we can uncover the hidden links that bring truth to light. The worn pattern on the outsole, a distinctive blend of angular grooves and subtle ridges, had initially seemed like an ordinary detail, but it became a key to unlocking the man's invisible trail. Investigators meticulously cataloged the footprints' unique features and cross-referenced them against a database of shoe models sold globally. The model, a limited edition from a high-end specialty brand, wasn't available in typical retail chains or online marketplaces. It was exclusive to boutique stores known for catering to affluent collectors and trendsetters. Detectives reached out to these boutiques, requesting purchase records from the past decade. Most stores maintained detailed logs of sales, especially for exclusive items requiring pre-orders or special shipments. One particular store in a metropolitan area stood out. A record showed a purchase made under an alias nearly a decade ago. The alias was carefully constructed, plausible but untraceable at first glance. It combined common names with fabricated birth dates and addresses, designed to dissolve like smoke when scrutinized superficially. The investigators didn't stop there. They obtained import logs from the shoe manufacturer and traced the shipment batch assigned to that store. Surveillance footage from the boutique, preserved due to a recent security system upgrade, captured a figure fitting the man's description entering and leaving the store. His gait, his coat's cut, even a glimpse of a distinctive wristwatch confirmed the match. The footage was grainy, but the unmistakable sole of the shoe was visible as he stepped onto the boutique's threshold. From that point, detectives began piecing together the alias's digital and financial footprint. They unearthed dormant bank accounts linked to the false identity, accounts that had seen sporadic activity, mostly transfers timed to coincide with rental payments on properties scattered across rural counties. Receipts recovered from a discarded file in an abandoned storage locker revealed payments for cabins and small cottages, some located in remote areas with little traffic or oversight. The rental agreements, though signed under the alias, included subtle details that hinted at the man's real habits. Deliveries of specialized equipment, requests for utility services to be set up just before his arrival, and mail forwarded to nearby towns rather than the rental addresses themselves. These patterns suggested a system designed to mislead, relying on layers of misdirection. What struck the investigators was the meticulousness of his disappearing act. He had constructed an entire network of false leads, confident that none would unravel. He banked on the assumption that small towns rarely coordinated with metropolitan law enforcement, that records wouldn't be cross-checked, and that his aliases would remain just that, aliases with no tangible connections. But the footprint had shattered that illusion. Each thread pulled revealed more. A receipt for a rare chemical compound purchased months before a known event, a bank statement showing untraceable cash deposits, and a rental payment made just days before the investigation intensified. These clues painted a picture of a man who believed himself untouchable, sheltered by layers of carefully maintained anonymity. As the team prepared to visit the most recent rental property, a remote cabin nestled deep within pine forests and accessible only by a narrow dirt road, tension mounted. The cabin's electricity had been reactivated recently. Satellite imagery confirmed movement around the area. The man's entire system hinged on the assumption that he was long gone, that no one would connect the dots to this obscure hideout. But that assumption was about to be tested. The quiet woods held a secret, and the investigators knew that one of those hideouts was still active, waiting, watching, and perhaps ready to vanish again at a moment's notice. The investigators moved cautiously through the dense underbrush, their flashlights piercing the gathering dusk as they closed in on the remote safe house. The cabin emerged slowly from the shadows, a squat, nondescript structure blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding pines. The air was thick with anticipation, each step forward tightening the tension that had been building ever since the satellite images confirmed recent activity here. No one spoke. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness, every creak of the wooden floorboards beneath their boots echoing like a warning. Inside, the atmosphere was unnervingly sterile, as if the occupant had painstakingly erased any sign of life. The investigators' eyes adjusted to the dim light, revealing walls lined with clocks, dozens of them, each lacking any numbers or markings on their faces. Their hands moved silently, the absence of numbers a deliberate choice to confuse any casual observer or perhaps to disorient the user. One of the detectives noted the eerie uniformity, a subtle reminder that time itself had been manipulated here, warped into something unrecognizable. Nearby, a cluttered desk held an array of disguises. Hats, wigs, glasses, and even prosthetic noses laid out with meticulous care. Each item seemed to speak of a man always ready to vanish, to become someone else entirely. Alongside these were maps, aged and frayed at the edges, with multiple routes painstakingly drawn in red and blue ink, escape paths, surveillance blind spots, and rendezvous points. The network of lines suggested a mind always calculating, always anticipating the next move, always one step ahead. But it was the workbench in the corner that drew the most attention. There, resting under a magnifying lamp, was a small, custom-made molding tool, an odd, almost unassuming device crafted with precision. The lead investigator picked it up carefully, turning it over in gloved hands. It was designed specifically to repair worn shoe soles, to restore the original tread pattern that would otherwise fade with use. This was no ordinary cobbler's tool. It was a device tailored for a criminal mind, intent on preserving the integrity of footprints left behind. The room fell silent as the forensic expert began examining the tool under a portable microscope. The significance of the device dawned on everyone. The thief hadn't just tried to cover his tracks. He had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the pattern of his shoe prints remained perfect, evading detection by leaving no imperfections or where patterns that could be matched to a specific pair of shoes. But here, beneath the magnifier, tiny imperfections, microscopic scratches and dents, marred the tool's surface. These unique blemishes, invisible to the naked eye, matched precisely the irregularities found on the footprint recovered at the original crime scene. It was a breakthrough, The painstaking effort to maintain a flawless footprint had, ironically, left the most telling clue. The thief's obsession with perfection had become his undoing, a reminder that even the most carefully laid plans can unravel through the smallest details. The safe house itself, once a fortress of secrecy, now stood exposed, a silent witness to a criminal's hubris and the relentless pursuit of justice. As the team secured the evidence, the weight of the discovery settled over them. This was more than just another hideout. It was the heart of a carefully orchestrated web that had been unraveling thread by thread. The implications were clear. The perfect crime was never truly perfect. It was only a matter of time before even the most elusive culprits left behind a trace, however faint. If you want more stories where perfect crimes fall apart from tiny details, make sure to subscribe. Every detail counts, and sometimes that's all it takes to crack the case wide open. The night was thick with silence as the thief slipped back onto the familiar path he once walked with practiced ease. Years had passed since he'd last touched this route, a stretch of shadowed alleys and forgotten corridors that had once been his playground. But time had not been kind, not to him, and certainly not to the perfect crimes he once executed flawlessly. Unbeknownst to him, the authorities had been steadily closing in, piecing together fragments from past incidents, connecting dots that no one else had dared to link. Tonight, his return was a fatal misstep. As he moved through the darkness, a small, almost imperceptible hum vibrated in the air, triggered by a motion sensor discreetly mounted near a narrow doorway. It was designed not just to detect movement, but to analyze it. The sensor's software compared each passing figure's gait signature, a digital fingerprint of stride length, pace, and rhythm, to a database compiled from previous crime scenes. The thief's steps, once indistinguishable amid the urban noise, now stood out starkly. His stride length matched the unique pattern recorded months ago during a high-profile break-in, a detail overlooked at the time but now flagged with growing urgency. Inside the police operations center, the screen flashed an alert. Officers exchanged glances, their earlier doubts replaced by a tense certainty. The man they'd hunted for so long was here, walking the very path they'd mapped out for surveillance. A swarm of tactical units began to mobilize quietly, their movements synchronized with practiced precision. The net was closing, slowly but inexorably. Unaware of the tightening grip around him, the thief's mind churned with a mixture of nostalgia and caution. This route was a fragment of his past, a place where memories of success and freedom lingered. But beneath the surface, something felt off. The subtle shift in the night air, the faint electric buzz of unseen eyes watching. His instincts, honed over countless close calls, warned him to stay sharp. Yet he dismissed the unease, convinced that his careful planning had anticipated every possible variable. As he neared the old loading dock, his footfalls triggered another sensor. This time, the system cross-referenced not only his gait but also the pressure exerted by each step, a unique signature shaped by years of habitual movement. The data converged, painting a clear picture. The same individual responsible for a string of unsolved heists was here, right now. Suddenly, in the distance, the faint crackle of radios broke the silence. The thief paused, heart pounding as realization dawned. The one detail he'd ignored, an innocuous, almost negligible aspect of his own walk, had been captured, catalogued, and weaponized against him. Years of meticulous evasion unraveled in an instant, undone by the very rhythm of his escape. He quickened his pace, weaving through shadows with practiced agility, but every turn led him deeper into the trap. Sirens blared faintly now, a growing chorus that chased him relentlessly. The walls seemed to close in, the city itself conspiring to betray his presence. In that moment, the thief understood the cruel irony. His greatest strength, the precision of his own body's movement, had become his undoing. The final mistake was not a flaw in his tools or a careless slip. It was the blind spot within himself, the one detail he thought too trivial to matter. Now, as the flashing lights painted the alley in urgent reds and blues, he found himself cornered by the relentless pursuit of justice, caught in a web spun from the very essence of his being. Breathing hard, eyes scanning for an escape, the thief faced the inescapable truth. The perfect crime, like the perfect step, was never truly flawless. And tonight, that truth was closing in faster than he ever anticipated. The alley's shadows stretched long and thin, trembling under the weight of flashing lights and hurried footsteps. He stood frozen, the world narrowing until only the cold pavement beneath his feet seemed real. His chest rose and fell rapidly, but it wasn't the rush of exertion that gripped him. It was the crushing realization as the lead investigator knelt down and pointed to a single, dusty footprint pressed into the cracked concrete. His eyes locked onto the print, his face blanching as the truth sank in with brutal clarity. This was the imprint of his own shoe, a detail so small, so easily dismissed amid the chaos of his escape. Yet it was the thread that unraveled everything. Shock rippled across his features, disbelief battling with the dawning horror that his carefully constructed fortress of invisibility had been breached by something as mundane as a footprint. The lead investigator rose, voice steady but charged with a quiet intensity. "You thought no one would find this, didn't you? That this one misstep would disappear like every other trace you left behind. But it didn't." Around him, officers began laying out a detailed timeline on a whiteboard, connecting the dots with precise markers and timestamps. Each crime scene photo was pinned alongside notes, revealing a pattern that was invisible until now. One tiny overlooked detail, a scuff on the heel of that shoe, matched a mark found at every scene. It was the invisible signature, the ghostly calling card that linked all the perfect crimes gone wrong. The thief's heart pounded as he watched the investigators reconstruct the chain of events, each moment folding into the next with unforgiving logic. The timeline exposed how, despite his meticulous planning, this flaw, this footprint, had betrayed him at every turn. The psychological tension thickened, a palpable weight pressing on his chest. He had always believed himself a shadow, untouchable, a ghost in the night. But now, the reality gnawed at him. Shadows can only hide so much, and sometimes, the faintest trace is enough to drag even the most elusive phantom into the light. His mind raced, frantically searching for an escape, for some way to twist the narrative, but the evidence was merciless. Every step he'd taken, every crime he'd committed, was entwined in that solitary mark. The investigators' voices overlapped, recounting how each scene bore this subtle imprint, how forensic analysis confirmed the unique, where patterns on his shoe matched the footprint found on the final scene. The noose was tightening, and his facade was crumbling. He felt the walls closing in, the cold reality of capture sinking deeper than any physical confinement ever could. The ghost, the master of perfect crimes, had left a shadow after all, and it had been his undoing. His gaze flickered to the faces around him, unwavering, relentless, the embodiment of justice, and for the first time, the weight of his actions pressed down without relief. Yet, even in this moment of defeat, a flicker of something else stirred beneath the surface. Was this truly the end? Or was there a deeper game at play, a secret yet unrevealed? As the cuffs closed around his wrists, binding him to a fate he had long evaded, his mind whispered of one final gambit, one last move hidden in the folds of his shadowed past. The silence between breaths thickened, the night awaiting the next chapter, poised on the edge of revelation. In the quiet that followed, the question lingered: was the capture truly the conclusion, or merely the prelude to a deeper truth yet to emerge? Even the most meticulously crafted plans, those that seem flawless on the surface, can unravel with a single, seemingly insignificant slip. In the quiet aftermath of the capture, what felt like the end was only the beginning of a far more intricate story. It's a powerful reminder that no crime is ever truly perfect. The tiniest detail, an overlooked trace, a misplaced word, an unnoticed glance, always has the power to expose the truth lurking beneath layers of deception. The silence that once held the night captive now trembles with the weight of what remains unsaid, what still awaits discovery. The illusion of control, of having all variables accounted for, is fragile. It shatters with the subtlety of a whisper or the faintest hint of a clue. This is the paradox that haunts every perfect crime. The greater the effort to erase every error, the more glaring the smallest oversight becomes. In the shadows of calculated moves and cold precision, human error breathes life into justice. It's the unnoticed fingerprint, the fleeting hesitation, or the faintest echo of a motive that ultimately speaks louder than the crime itself. Here, in this fragile interplay between perfection and imperfection, the story finds its true pulse. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear that the pursuit of truth is never straightforward. It weaves through the labyrinth of lies and half-truths, propelled by the faintest clues that refuse to be silenced. The narrative doesn't end with the capture but extends into the unraveling of every concealed layer, every hidden intention. This story, like many others, stands as a testament to the relentless persistence of detail, the small voices that refuse to be drowned out by the grand design of a perfect plan. It is in these moments, where all seems lost to misdirection, that the smallest detail speaks the loudest. So, as you sit with this story echoing in your mind, remember that the beauty of these tales lies not only in their twists, but in the truth that lurks beneath the surface. It reminds us to look closer, to listen more intently, and to never dismiss the subtle hints that might seem inconsequential at first glance. They are the threads that, when pulled, unravel the tightest knots of deception. If you found yourself captivated by this journey through the shadows of a perfect crime gone wrong, don't miss what's coming next. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story that challenges perception and celebrates the relentless quest for truth. Drop a comment below with "I'm watching until the end" to let us know you're here for the full ride, eager to unravel every twist and turn alongside us. And stay tuned for the next story, because in the world of perfect crimes, there's always another detail waiting to speak, another secret begging to be unveiled. Your curiosity is the key that keeps these stories alive, and together, we'll uncover the truths hidden in the smallest details.